the same issue, Tánaiste. I'm asking for details of your engagement with senior management in the Defence Forces with regard to the number of serving members who have convictions for gender-based violence. Your plans to publish the recent audit by the Defence Forces carried out in this regard. And I should say, I'm asking this question in the context of the Women of Our Honours documentary, which was back in October 21. Shockingly, the Commission on the Future of the Defence Forces made absolutely no reference whatsoever to members charged or convicted of serious criminal offences, and they were asked to look at the structures. So I'll stop and come back.
Thomas,
this is 67, is it? Yeah, yeah.
It is, yeah, 67.
Sorry.
We're taking 75 and 91 together, I think.
Am I? Okay. Yeah. Certainly am. Sorry, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, I thank the deputies for your questions. And I can confirm that there has been engagement with the Chief of Staff and I. We met yesterday to discuss these very serious issues. And following a recent case, I was informed on Friday the 21st of June of another case involving a member who is still serving after being convicted of assault causing harm. And in light of this, I immediately requested a report from the Chief of Staff to find out how many serving members of the Defence Forces have civil convictions or are before the civil courts on serious criminal offences. And I received an initial report on this matter and sought a more detailed version. I wasn't quite satisfied with the first report. I sought a more detailed version and further clarification. And on Wednesday last, I was informed of 68 Defence Force personnel who had been convicted or are currently before the civil courts on a range of criminal offences, including public order, back to Deputy Moynihan's point, drink driving, drug offences, physical assault, sexual offences and others. And recent events are without doubt an extremely concerning, unacceptable, and as already stated, I've issued an instruction that would immediate affect all serving personnel either convicted of sexual assault or rape or awaiting discharge or currently before the courts for such offences are to be put on local leave on a without prejudice basis. There are provisions in the regulations to provide for this. It's essential that due process in these serious cases is followed on a consistent basis across the organisation. And I have a concern that this has not been happening in the past, and I discussed this with the Chief of Staff and made that point clearly. I've appointed Peter Ward, Senior Counsel, to undertake a high-level analysis of the application of military law in circumstances where personnel have been convicted of serious offences in the civil courts. And Mr. Ward will be asked to come back with an outcome of this high-level analysis, along with any recommendations and any enhanced powers that may be necessary to improve processes, regulation, legislation and reporting arrangements. And as I said, the terms of reference are nearly finalised in that regard.
Well, Tánaiste, I welcome that you're taking a hands-on approach, but can you imagine? We've had a commission on the future of the Defence Forces. We've had the documentary on the Women of Honour. We've a tribunal set up. And you, as Tánaiste of this country, the second most important role has to go repeatedly and ask, what's the situation? So you get a report, you're not happy with it, you get another report. Then you're told there are 68 Defence Force personnel who have been convicted or are before the courts, or one way or another. For what period of time? What period of time are we talking about with the 68? 1 year, 2 years? How do you explain different discrepancies where 68 was given on another occasion, a lesser number was given? This whole, it's absolutely satisfactory. And do you remember the Women of Honour? Trust was the biggest thing, to actually have trust in a system that they would be believed and listened to. And here we have now a situation like this on a drip feed basis in relation to the most serious offences, all arising from a courageous woman, Natasha O'Brien. Once again, women coming forward courageously, but nothing proactive. And I think you're on record yourself for saying there's no proactive mechanism here. So can we have clear details, please? I'll stop and I'll come back because I'm over time.
Yeah,
Thank you, Cancórla. I think, as the previous speaker has just referred to, I think it is the fear generated by some of the activities that have gone on unknown to the general public. The fear of women who are obviously in constant fear of being attacked. And unfortunately, these attacks have happened, and horrendously. And some of the cases are so bad that to allow anything even remotely associated to continue indefinitely is wrong. And I would ask the Taoiseach, I know that he is committed to this, I would ask that everything possible be done in the shortest possible time to ensure that we don't have this kind of culture indefinitely.
I said earlier that I think the level of violence in our society against women in particular is at an alarming level. And people will say we had it in the past and so on. I actually think, and we've discussed this among others, to me I find it unconscionable. I cannot understand how people can engage in such violence against fellow human beings on the streets or in any location. I think, but we have to do a deeper analysis of what's at play here in society, and what the role of social media may be, what the role of other factors may be. But as far as I'm concerned, in terms of the defence forces, as I said earlier, the standard should be even higher, because the defence forces are meant to protect society and protect people. And we've established a tribunal of inquiry in respect of issues that women of honour raised. And let's be clear, and I accept what Deputy Connolly is saying, there was resistance to that. And there is still resistance to the phenomenon, the concept of culture, change and transformation. And when I brought a legislation before this House recently, it was manifest, and people may have inadvertently, for different reasons, opposed certain aspects of that bill. But that bill is about culture change. And yet a campaign was mounted to undermine that legislation. And I think we need to a certain extent, and I was very frustrated at that. Now the tribunal is up and running. All sexual assaults I ordered a year ago are to go to the Gardaí. And I think, sorry, I'll come back again maybe.
Connolly.
I have a minute and 30 seconds. Tomorrow is statements, and I'll happily elaborate tomorrow if I had the time, like you have, on how we've got to this stage and how we ignored an interdepartmental committee back in '97 that came forward with recommendations. So violence is not an epidemic or a pandemic. It's violence mostly by men against women, but by some women against men. Specifically, I'm asking you now why we have to rely on a drip basis to get information. I've asked you specifically in relation to the 68 people that you mentioned. What period of time are we talking about? And what about the other years? Where is the analysis in relation to that? What number of serving people are before the military court? In relation to Peter Ward, who I have great respect for, terms of reference, what are they? Will we see them? What period of time? Will the report be published? And then go back again to the women of honour and the Natasha O'Brien and all the other women, what they have put up with. I'm not happy. I am not happy to be here tonight while you begin to tell us that violence is unacceptable. That goes without saying. It's what we do in this Dáil to stop it. And the army, and we set up, I'm going to mention it for the third time, a commission on the future of the army or the defence forces, didn't mention this subject even once. They were commissioned to look at the structures within the army and utterly the defence forces and utterly failed to look at it. So if you could answer my questions now, Peter Ward, the number of people, what about the other years, who's doing that? And finally, and I thank you for your indulgence, Cancorla, just the women of honour has asked, would there be any consideration given to extending the terms of reference of the tribunal to include assaults against civilians by army personnel? Thank you.
First of all, Peter Ward has been asked to examine, and the function basically is in terms of assessing whether the existing defence regulations are fit for purpose in respect of this, and also in terms of the military liaison officer, and to do a high-level analysis of it. There are 68 cases, go back about 2 years, or maybe just a bit before the 2 years. And in terms of the Tribunal of Inquiry is going to take a lengthy time already, Deputy. And the idea, it's going back 40 years, if not more, already. And the idea that you'd then extend the terms of reference to cover every civil case over the last 40 years, I don't think is realistic. And I say that seriously. I think we have to make sure that we at least get a tribunal that can finish within 3 years. And I I'm sceptical as to whether it can finish within 3 years, but I hope it does. I hope it does. And it's a public inquiry. And there's a whole range of measures we've taken. There's a sexual ethics programme underway by Professor Louise Crowley in our defence forces. I think there's other, and I would expect a speedy return from the Senior Counsel, Peter Ward, and I will publish it. Oh yeah, terms of reference will be published tomorrow morning. I was hoping to have them for question time tonight, but I'll have it published tomorrow. Because I want to get a comprehensive analysis, people are saying we don't have this or that. And I think the fundamental from what I have to be careful, because there's another case which we got a separate report on, which is now under process, but nonetheless it's clear to me inconsistency in terms and lack of follow-through, lack of proactive management, lack of collation of data, not satisfactory.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
Okay, and there's a broader thing we passed at Cabinet this morning, the CHOD legislation, which was on in the Commission of Defence Force. To me, that ultimately is essential in terms of what I believe is not a fit-for-purpose
We're way over
structure within
time.
the Defence
Thank
Forces, as per the 1954 Act. It's simply not fit for purpose. And that is manifest again in terms of how this situation
Thank you.
has evolved.
Question